New Jersey recently announced that sportsbooks have to deploy two-factor or multi-factor authentication for their platforms. What does this mean for gambling operators?
So fundamentally, sportsbook operators they're in the entertainment business, and entertainment is a sector where the actual user experience really matters.
Yeah.
So we think that when you look at the kind of issues people have with logging in by two-factor authentication, it's pretty evident that people don't enjoy that. And you consider the experience of logging into your bank with conventional multi-step, multi-factor authentication. It's just not a lot of entertainment in that. So I think fundamentally for operators, they've got to think about how they can actually preserve a really strong user experience, because increasingly it's going to be the user experience that differentiates them.
Yeah.
And so really that's our message today. And I think that in fairness, the number one issue within the kind of login process is just, can you actually ensure there's a high login success ratio? Because to be honest, you find an awful lot of times people don't get a text message or they don't get the authenticator app, and actually that ends up with them really being annoyed, which can end up in not just lost bets, but also actually support queries. So these are the issues.
What would you say are some of the key challenges presented by MFA?
Well, if you think about the fact that social media platforms like Facebook or Twitter have a very, very low rate of adoption of 2FA. So within Facebook, it would be roughly 4% of users are actually utilizing 2FA to log in.
Yeah.
And within Twitter, it would be 2%. These are incredibly low rates, and it's therefore pretty self-evident that actually users just don't enjoy the experience.
Yeah.
And actually you also think about the fact that there have been so many data breaches within Facebook and Twitter, so there have been lots of incentives for people to use this technology and protect themselves, but they really don't want to. So what can they do, what can gaming operators do to preserve a user experience in the face of that? It's a really, really kind of tough issue. And what we're saying is that actually you don't need to compromise on the user experience in order to get that quality of MFA. We're actually the world's only single-step multi-factor authentication solution out there, and that means that people will be able to get that two-factor authentication without having the requisite number of steps. And this is our message here today, the fastest MFA. So we're reckoning to do that in 2.5 seconds, whereas typically people are talking about 30-second login process. And from our perspective, that's absolutely the main driver of user experience. So I guess the main point that we'd like to emphasize here is that actually as you increase the complexity of logging in, so you see, yes, on the one hand, users getting irritated, but also more importantly, a drop in the successful login rate. And so what we call the login success ratio is a really important metric for operators to actually measure their user experience. And we're often finding that because people have had passwords for so long and it's really only been the only kind of option in town, they're not even aware of their login success ratio. So we're trying to actively promote the idea of people monitoring that metric as a means of gauging the quality of their login user experience. And it's that will have a big ramification for their sort of onward monetization of their users. We say we're the only single-step multi-factor authentication, and it's really based on this. We have 12 awarded worldwide patents that really provide for our cryptography all the way up to actually the kind of user interface and the APIs. But there's a fairly deep amount of technology here, and we've licensed that to people like Intel, and to Microsoft, and to Google, and even to the US government. So there's a fairly substantial amount of deep tech behind what is, on the face of it, a fairly elegant and simple solution. But the reason why we can say that we have the only solution, the only single-step MFA out there, is because we have essentially a means of splitting a cryptographic key that no one else can do. And that just means that we can essentially use the ownership of a user's device as one of the factors in the authentication. And I guess that's how we get one factor from the user and one factor just from the possession of the device. And it's pretty much like having a chip and pin, right? So you take your bank card to the checkout, you've got your card, you add your pin, that's a multi-factor authentication. you talk about, devices becoming your wallet. This is exactly what we're doing. We're making your device your wallet. With the addition of a PIN, it becomes, exactly the same. You get that multi-factor authentication.
And how can MIRACL help sportsbooks overcome these hurdles?
Okay, so we really do feel that we have the world's only single-step multi-factor authentication solution out there. And that means that essentially not only do you get happier players because they get to go where they want to get to faster, but it really means that the average login success ratio goes much higher. And that means that people basically aren't being stopped at the front gates of an application and are able to get to where they want to actually be within the application faster and get to place bets. And to be honest, the ramifications for that are, A, we see a lot of sort of time-sensitive trades are easier, happening better, and B, people are closer to their impulse purchase desires. And actually, when you consider that 50% of purchases online are impulse purchases, it's really important to grab them, while they're kind of hungry and when they've got something on their mind. And just overall, we're finding that, with a high login success ratio, you get people engaging far, far more. And that's an absolute critical driver for gaming operators.
So there's often been an idea that security provisions can often be difficult and costly to implement. Would you agree with this?
Well, I think really at a high level, we are committed to actually bringing our authentication to operators in the most usable and easy to integrate way imaginable. Yeah. I guess there would be two things I'd say. On the one hand, people can use our solution to just get rid of the second factor, like an SMS message or, as I say, the authenticator app. And in that instance, they get to keep their username and password. They don't change any of the user flows, and that can work in the short-term solution. So implementing that really is super fast. We can do that very, very quickly because, as I say, there's very little that needs to change. We have had quite a few customers start that way and then move on to using our solution to get rid of all of their usernames, all of their passwords, and that can actually also improve the registration process because users have less sort of required input in order to become actual registered players. And that can take longer. And what I would say there is that there are some tweaks that essentially are required within the user flows, and we've got a lot of standardized templates to enable that integration to happen swiftly. So, for example, we've had customers implement a pilot of the full kind of password replacement in 2 to 3 days. So we're very proud of that fact, and all the time our documentation and the videos and supporting documentation all the time that's getting better at actually reducing that whole lead time.
Yeah. It's more of an investment rather than costly.
Absolutely, and we would like to think as well that the increment in revenue and the saving in cost, so more revenue as a result of bets being placed and not lost, less cost as a result of reduced support queries, those all provide actually what we call a hard ROI, a genuine hard return on investment for operators. And yeah, the stats are pretty compelling. We've got one operator that's literally grown 30% month on month for the last 6 months just as a result of implementing this solution. They're now the number one sportsbook lottery aggregator in Africa. They're thrilled with our solution. So we've got plenty of data showing actually that in the field our solution gets 99.6% average login success rate, which is really ensuring that a lot of bets aren't left at the front gates, as I say, which is definitely happening with SMS and authenticator apps. So absolutely. And
lastly, could you give us a bit of a sneak peek into some of your plans for the US market?
So whilst we're new to the US gaming sector or gambling sector, the reality is we have a good US customer base. Yeah. The second thing is that we've actually got just recently a quoted US company that's invested in us, and they're helping us on the identity verification side in terms of document verification, liveness, and all of the elements that essentially form the building blocks for our authentication to sit on top of. And we're actually in the process of developing some products with them, and we think there's going to be some exciting opportunity. But I think most important of all is that actually what we're here to talk about today is genuinely that in the first innings. That is to say that Yes, New Jersey have just started this new legislation for demanding people that use two-factor authentication. But in reality, there are going to be at least 6 states that follow New Jersey. At the moment, it's just sportsbook. We think it'll also go to casino in time. And beyond gaming and gambling, we think there are going to be plenty of instances where actually, if the user experience is better than a username and password, why wouldn't you also have MFA and thereby secure your account and actually make the whole user experience better. So we really think that this is the main growth driver for the business going forward. Happily, we're going to be introducing a product in the 4th quarter that's going to further help. A sneak preview here, but the reality is, we think that the main message of, hey, actually two-factor authentication needs to be user-friendly, and this is how. That has a long way to play.
Yeah, well, it sounds very exciting. So
Great.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Not at all.
Thank you.